Good morning, everyone. We studied this week's the portion of Shoftim, and I'm studying the third talk of the Rebbe from selections from Likutei Sichos. The topic of our discussion is going to be a king, because in this week's Torah portion, we read a commandment, chapter 17, verse 15. The Torah commands, appoint a king over yourself. Anybody knows how long it took till they appointed the first king? About 360 years. However, Moshe was the actual first king. Moshe was the king of the Jewish people. A lot of laws applied to a king are derived from the leadership of Moshe. However, we're going to discover the function of a king vis-a-vis the nation and how he impacts them and they impact him. This is the topic that we will be discussing. I'm going to read the start, and then we'll go into summary. Rashba was a famous rabbi. He lived in the 6th century, described the position of a Jewish king in one of his responses, stating, "The king is considered as the entire community, for the entire community and all Israel is dependent on him." In other words, you look at the entire community of Jewish people and you look at the king, you're looking at the same thing. Because the entire Jewish people depended on the king, and therefore he is what the entire community is. In a similarly, Medrash Tanchuma, the Medrash Tanchuma preceded the Talmud, states, the head of the generation is the entire generation. The head of the generation referring to the king. He's the head. He is the entire generation. Or, to use Rashi's phrasing, the Nasi is a leader of the Jewish people of the generation, is equivalent to the entire generation, for the Nasi includes all. Again, you look at the Jewish people as a whole, this is what you're going to see in a king. You look at the king, he represents the entire Jewish people. Rambam, however, compares the king to some other body part. Until now, Rashba and Tanchuma compare the king to the head, right, Ali? Rambam says his heart is the heart of the entire congregation of Israel. Straightforwardly, the king is the heart of the entire congregation of Israel, because just as the vitality of the entire body is dependent upon the heart, so too the entire congregation of Israel is dependent on the king. To refer back to Rashba, all Israel is dependent on him. What does Rambam did? He changes the comparison of the king from the head of the body to the heart of the body. And he gives you a reason. Because the entire body functions because of the heart. What happens if the heart ceases to function? The body is not alive anymore. The Jewish king is the vitality of the Jewish king is the vitality of the Jewish people, and he's the cause of their life. And therefore, he's compared to the heart. That's the Rebbe. Yes.
If the king dies, what happens?
We need to appoint another one.
Right.
We call it heart transplant. Everything that modern day technology creates or finds exists in the Torah. Just like the Jewish people cannot exist without a king, because he's compared a king to the heart. What happened when the king is not around anymore? You put another one. Now today we find a heart transplant.
The first heart transplant
Okay.
was Jewish. I guess Hashem knew.
All right. As the Rebbe, I always love Dick's comments.
Become me getting off track.
Only wish they were said after. But I appreciate when you weren't here when I walked in, I said to myself, "Oh, it's Dick." I really miss it. Ask the Rebbe, why do Rambam compares king to the heart? We understand the heart is the most vital part, and the entire body is dependent on the heart's function. If the heart does not function, the entire body is not functioning. We understand that. But after all, the king is the leader. A leader is the head. In my body, which part leads? Which part makes decisions? The head. So I understand you compare the king to a head, but not to our heart. Between the heart and the head and the brains, the head is first. That's why it's called the head. In addition, in the comments, they bring that the word king in Hebrew is melech. How does melech how do you write the word melech? Three letters, mem, lud, chaf. Mem stands for moach, lamed stands for lev, and chaf stands for kaved, liver. So in the order, you have brains, heart, liver. Liver is the one that refines and cleans the blood. In other words, take out what's supposed to leave and takes back what's supposed to be recycled, returned back. So the brains represent intelligence, heart represent emotions, kaved, liver represent action. So these are three expressions of the human. But always you put moach first. You put brains first. Now, there is nobody above the king. There's no doubt. If so, why is he the heart of the Jewish people? He should be the head of the Jewish people. Says the Rebbe, before we come to an explanation, we will discover that there is another terminology termed for a king, which is Nasi. Nasi. In modern Hebrew, Nasi is president. Okay, but in terminology of Talmudic time, Nasi is the greatest leader. But there is the king. It says in the Torah, Asher Nasi Yechta. Nasi refers in the next week's portion. It talks about a king who sinned, disobeyed God. He admits to it, and he is doing teshuvah. So the Torah refers to a king in the terminology of Nasi, of a president, a leader. We find other places in the Torah that Nasi is referred to a king. Says the Rebbe, however, there is a major distinction between Nasi and Melech, and a king. And they are, the king is there to make decisions about conquering the land, adding taxes, giving a break, making sure there's safe and peace in a community where people live, providing all their needs. Nasi, on the other hand, is the court, the Sanhedrin leader. Nasi is Av Bedin. His job is to teach the Torah, to understand what God's desire in the Torah when God said something. So whenever you have a halachic question, you go to Sanhedrin. And in Sanhedrin, the Av Bedin, the one in charge, is the one who is going to define it. There are many, many laws in Torah that the Sanhedrin cannot rule unless the Av Bedin, unless the Nasi is involved. For example, to expand the temple, to expand the courtyard, to expand Jerusalem, there is a procedure that only if the Av Bedin is there. Egla Rufa, the end of this week's Torah portion about finding a dead body and we don't know who is the murderer, there needs to be an atonement. I believe you need to have an Av Bedin. There are many times you need the leader of the Sanhedrin. Says the Rebbe, a Nasi and a king are two distinct, even though sometimes king is called Nasi, there are two distinct titles. For example, the Torah tells us that a king is forbidden to be in the Sanhedrin. So a king will never serve in the court. The only exception is Malchei Beit David. The Davidian kings are allowed to be in the Sanhedrin. King David was a judge. King Solomon was a judge. But, says the Rebbe, that even though they were allowed to adjudicate. They were not allowed to be in the Sanhedrin. In other words, they're allowed to form a court of law, Jewish law. They have 2 more or 4 more, odd number, and they have a ruling, they issue ruling. But Sanhedrin, the 71 elders that sits in the courtyard of the temple, cannot have any of the kings, including Malchei Beit David. So in other words, even though Nasi, Asher Nasi Yechta, even though the Torah refers to a king also in the word of Nasi, a president, the word Nasi is assigned the title for the leader of the Sanhedrin. And in that way, it's a major distinction. A king is going to be there to defend the people against their enemies, provide there should be no famine, that everybody obeys the law, everybody does the right thing. And the Sanhedrin's job is to teach us the Torah, make sure we study Torah, make sure we know how to serve God, make sure that if we do go astray, we are back. That's the purpose of Sanhedrin. So if I were to put the 2 against each other and compare it to the body parts, the king is the heart, because he's there continuously making sure that the body parts are intact, they have their sustenance, right? The king is there to make sure the dollar rate and the exchange rate, all the rules for the peaceful of the citizens. That's like the heart, giving energy, providing oxygen to the entire body part, all the body parts. The Nasi, the leader of the court, is like the head, is the brains. He's there to tell you how to serve God and what not to do. Yes, Harry.
Who came up with the Rosh Tevis of Melech?
It's not Rosh Tevis, it's the name that defines a king.
But who came up with Moach?
Kabbalah, that's why the Lashon HaKodesh, that's why the holy language, it's called holy, because it's all comprised and walk within each other.
You come up with anything Nasi? Nun should be something, Shin should be something.
There is.
What is it? I'm sorry.
No, there is.
Okay. I have
Shin, Nasi is made out of Nun, Shin, Yud, Aleph.
Right.
Shin, Yud, Aleph, I know, is Shel Israel. Shel Israel, Shin, Yud, and the Aleph also is part of Israel. Israel is made out Neshamus Israel. Neshamot Israel. Okay? Thank you, Aleph. So we had a question. Huh?
That puts me in my place.
There was a question we started. How come Rambam compares the king to a heart? Should be compared to the brains. Says the Rebbe, now the Rebbe, after the following, that there are 2 titles for a king. Nasi, a leader of the court, but also assigned the king, and the word king. These are actually 2 separate, distinct tasks among the Jewish people. One's assignment is to teach the Torah and make sure they serve God properly. That's the brains. That's like the moach, the brains of the Jewish people. The other, a king, is like the heart, just like the heart, continuously looking after the body parts, providing them with energy, make sure they get what they need. So is the king, is a servant of the Jewish people, and it compares to the heart.
So why would they call him?
Now we go back, says the Rebbe. Now we can understand why a king is compared to a heart. That's what the Rebbe is going to explain. Yes, Ali?
But why is the king also referred to?
By the way, we're not talking about Moshe. Moshe will circle back at the end. Moshe is both. This is a smart student. Yes,
Why then is Melech ever called Nasi?
we're going to get there. Just a minute.
Okay.
Slowly.
Take it easy, Harry. We'll get there.
Okay.
Here is to me, it's very beautiful, so I can summarize it. Says the Rebbe, if you look at the human body, you have the brains and you have the heart. The brains and the heart are different from each other in 2 ways. The first is the brains non-stop functioning. It has to continuously work. Is there a moment when what did I say? The brain? I am so sorry. The heart, it's the opposite. The heart continuously functions. What happens if the heart stops working?
Dead.
If you want to know if someone is alive, what do? You put your hand on the heart, right? That will tell us if the person is alive or not, or you went upstairs. Brains, it's not necessarily. There are movements of the brains, but for the naked eye, you don't know. You don't see it. Sometimes you have to have a machine that will say there is a movement of the brains, right?
Right.
I'm not going to talk about brain dead, because in Judaism, the definition of dead is the heart, not the brains, okay? And this comes here. Don't want to get there, okay, Dick? I'm sure you have examples to share, and I'm sure you know the sources. So to go back to the heart, one thing is about the heart, it will never cease from working. There is another point to the heart. It's the weakest body part, vital organs. The Gemara tells us, and it comes from the Talmud, that the weakest of all body organs that are crucial is the heart. It's a very weak part. And I think it makes sense because it continuously works. It never stops. Therefore, it's the weakest. I had a very close family member who came to visit. They needed to take a break from all the headaches and stress that they were enduring in the location. They came in. Before they left, the doctor said to tell me to look after the person because the heart, that person can get a heart attack from so much pressure. That person came here and actually fell down at the airport on the way back already. And all I did is put my hand on the heart. The heart was functioning. So I come down. Turned out what happened, that person had a stroke, a massive stroke from the pressure. It's all. But the doctor, what's fascinating, the doctor warned the family about the heart, not about the brains. Nobody thought that that person will have a stroke. Only Monday morning quarterback, they realized that was something they should have worried about. But right now, the heart is the most not only the most crucial, but it's the weakest. It's called the weakest organ of the body. That's why we should take good care of the heart. There is another, the brains, on the other hand, is a much stronger body part. And in addition, I'm sure if you take stroke and heart attack, you will find that heart attack is way, way higher than stroke. I didn't do the study, but to me, it makes sense. Oh, here is a nurse who says, by all means, no doubt, right? 100%.
One of the biggest issues
Is a heart attack,
Yeah.
right? Heart failure.
Yeah.
So in other words, and it's the cause of a larger part of mortality. So therefore, the heart is a very weak because it constantly works. Brains, on the other hand, is totally separated. Brains it doesn't have to be functioning the whole time, and brains is not that weak. There is another distinction between the brain and the heart. All the Rebbe finds in the Torah, but suddenly it works with in our anatomy, it works with medicine, it works with many other parts. The Rebbe says that the king, the community is ordered to provide all his needs, all his sustenance, not only his sustenance, all his desires, kol asher yechpot, anything he wants. So if he wanted Arabian horses and he wants to have tigers in his yard so he can look at the tigers every morning, the community must. There's no debate. They're not taking votes in the Senate. Should we allocate? The king will decide if he wants to have a personal doctors traveling and an entourage of nurses. And there is not allowed to have an iota of discussion. Why? Because he is the entire people. The Av Bet Din, the Sanhedrin, the leader of the Sanhedrin, on the other hand, is a public servant. Therefore, he is provided a salary. Every public servant should be provided their needs. But his entire life is not from public. He's getting a salary. You have to work with a budget. What if this guy is marrying off a son or a daughter and they want to have 8 horses delivering and a Rolls Royce followed, we say to them, pay for it, that's it. It's a major difference, says the Rebbe. On one hand, and it's both, the Rebbe says it's both extremes. On one hand, the king will have whatever he wants, and he has the legitimacy and the right out there without a question. But that will explain why is the heart, why the king is so weak. Because he's all about from the community. He has nothing on his own. He's not so strong. We call it a weakness. The Sanhedrin, the leader of the Sanhedrin, on the other hand, provided salary for their service, but they have their own entity. They're separated like the brains, and therefore they are much stronger body part. Did you understand the two? So we have two different distinctions between brains and heart. One, the heart continuously works and therefore gives life all the time. Brains is separated from the body. Two, the heart is there for the people all the time. That's why it's so weak. In other words, the community must provide all that he wants, not just needs. Brains, on the other hand, is all separated from the body, and therefore not everything that he wants, whatever he needs, but no more than that. So far, so good, Ali? Says the Rabbi, now we can understand why the king is compared to the heart. Because the purpose of a king, as stated, the purpose of a king is for the people. What's the function of the king? For the people, right? Remember we spoke about it? Where does the king get all his needs and desires? From the people. That's why you compare the king to the heart. Do you understand that, Ali?
Yes, I do.
The Rebbe goes on to say that the same thing, the same idea of the difference distinction between the leader. By the way, in Jewish history, there were leaders of the Sanhedrin while there was kings. Hillel was Av Beddin, Rabban Gamliel, while there was a king. In other words, it's a two distinct assignment of leadership. Says the Rebbe, that explains the difference between brains, intelligence, and emotions in the heart. Just like we discussed the difference between Nasi and king, in the heart, let's start with the brain. Whenever I use intelligence to discover a new idea or to solve a problem, I have to be totally detached from the idea. Why? If I'm connected to the idea, I am, so to say, blinded or painted by that idea, and I will not come to the right conclusion. How do I find a solution to a problem? How do I find an answer to a question? How do I discover? You have to be removed from that idea, and then all the revelations come to you. We know all the greatest inventions, they do it when? Before they wake up, the time between getting up and while they sleep. Great inventors would go away from their family and community so they can be separated from, we know that. Steve Jobs, others, they will take once a year, will take a month or 2 weeks, where they'll be totally isolated from all humanity and all news. That's the only way for them to discover and come up with new ideas. You have to be removed completely. What happens if you are attached to the idea that you're trying to discover? You will never reach a conclusion. You'll never have a deep understanding. And part of it is because you're not blindsided. What happens when you are residing over a case and it's a relative? What do you call it? If you're a judge, you're biased. If you are connected to the idea, you won't reach the correct answer, the correct conclusion, because you're biased. The heart, on the other hand, emotions, it's all about attachment. How do I fall in love with somebody? By connecting with that person. How do I express my emotions, fear, victory, desire to connect or desire to impress you? It's all about connection. I can't do it with someone far from me. That's why, says the Rebbe, emotions are so impacted by my surrounding that today I'm in love and tomorrow I change my mind. Tomorrow I fell out of love, right? They call it fall out in love. What happened? Yesterday, did you lie to her? No, I fell in love. It was the true emotions. What happened today? Fell out of love. That's the heart, because it's so bonded with the object or the person that it can be, so to say, biased. So tomorrow I will fall in love with another type of food. I hate this already. I have had enough of it. That's why the relationship, for example, should be based on brains, not on heart. Of course you should fall in love. Of course emotions are important, otherwise there is no bonding. Because emotions are bonding, it's very biased. In order for that bonding to last, you need the brains that is totally detached and removed. And the brain says to me, that's what you're supposed to do. You are going to be in love. You need to express yourself. You need to serve. You need to connect. You need to do ways to distract yourself from anything that is harboring that relationship. So therefore, you have brains and heart, two separate functions. The brain is detached. The brain is not working all the time. The brain is not serving, so to say, all the body. The brain is there controlling the entire body. The heart, on the other hand, a very weak part. You know what? It continuously working because it bonds with every part of the body, and it continuously brings life. Otherwise, if the heart stop working, it's dead. Just like emotions. If the heart is not desiring that, there is no emotions anymore. Is that clear? Did I make myself clear? Says the Rebbe, now we understand why the king is a heart. Because the idea of the king, as we said, is the weakest link, is the weakest part of the vital, because he continuously have to work for the people. And now we can understand the difference between him and a leader. Says the Rebbe, but at the end of the day, Melech, a king, is also called Nasi. Remember we said that. That's the ultimate first and last kings. The first king is Moshe. Moshe gave us the Torah. Moshe is the one who is instructed by God to teach us the Torah. It's different than regular king. So you have Moshe, Bedin, and king. So you have brains and heart. And he served in both functions. That's why Rashba and Tanchuma calls him the leader, the brains. And Rambam calls him the heart. Mashiach, when Mashiach will arrive, he'll be a king of David, he will rule. It says, Ve'erichu birat Hashem. It says in the prophet, I believe Isaiah said that when King Mashiach will come, he will preside over decisions. He will make decisions who is Jewish and who is not, who is right, who is wrong. He will be the judge to rule. And maybe it contradicts, it says that he cannot be in Sanhedrin, but as we discovered, the idea of the ultimate king is to have both functions, king of brain, representing heart. And that's the uniqueness of Mashiach. I just want to add that this lesson taught me a lot about the definition of a human being. If I want to be a king, if I want to rule my life, if I want to be able to make sure that I am on the right path and I'm doing that which God had sent me to serve him, I need to have both. Emotions is the bond, is the glue, as I said, that connects us. And therefore, basing on emotions alone, sometimes it's going to wane out. It's not going to be there. The brains, on the other hand, has to be totally free from bias. That's the idea of being separated. You cannot have a relative of yours, if you're the judge, to come in front of you at the court because it's called bias. The brains must be removed to be able to freely say, this is what's the right thing. And not because what I have to, but because they said to me that I have to, or for whatever reason. It has to be only for the purpose of serving God, the purpose for which I was created. Then we will direct the heart in the right way. And this conclusion, our lesson for the day and this Shabbat. Shabbat Shalom, everybody.